It's the last trading day for the week. Good afternoon and welcome to Business Incorporated. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwagu. Coming up, European leaders reach a pathway to a deal on new terms for Britain's membership of the EU. As the WTO Ministerial Conference ends today in Kenya, delegates are optimistic about the outcome of the meeting. Plus, IMF Chief Christine Lagarde to face trial over her role in a payout of some 400 million euros to businessman Bernard Tapie. And now the stories. The UK Prime Minister David Cameron says a pathway to a deal on new terms for Britain's membership of the EU has been found by European leaders. He, however, says it will be hard work to finalize terms by the proposed deadline in February. Mr. Cameron is demanding change on 4 issues, including stopping in-work benefits for EU migrants in the UK for 4 years. Mr. Cameron wants to get a new deal before putting the question of the UK's membership of the EU to an in-out referendum of British people by the end of 2017. As well as controls on migrant benefits, he is also demanding protection for countries outside the Eurozone on financial matters, measures to boost competitiveness, and an exemption for the UK from the drive towards an ever closer union. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said the leaders all want a compromise. An interesting week it was for the European market. The US Fed Reserve took the historic rate hike decision, and the European Union has just reached a pathway to a deal on new terms for Britain's membership of the EU. Let's switch over now to the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, where my colleague Conrad Burson, DWTV Channels TV correspondent, is standing by. Good afternoon, Conrad. Well, a very interesting but nerve-wracking trading week ends today. Wrap it up for us, Conrad. Would you say bullish, bearish, or just warm? Well, Conrad, I said it's just a very interesting week today, nerve-wracking though. Wrap it up for us. Would you say it's a bullish, bearish, or just warm?
Hello, hello, hello.
Well, Conrad, we seem to be having issues there. If you're hearing me, well, we are looking at the week, which has been quite interesting, even though it's been nerve-wracking. We want you to wrap it up for us. Would you say it's bearish, bullish, or just warm?
Absolutely bullish, Chimezi, even though today on this what they call quadruple witching day on the derivatives markets, the DAX is doing a bit of an erratic upswing and downswing. But still, on a weekly scale, the German stock index is up a bit more than 2%. And remember, this is the week where the Federal Reserve in the United States raised interest rates for the very first time in 9 years. And given this, more expensive loans and interest rates in the US, I think the reaction on the stock market is pretty positive. It's very good news that there hasn't been a negative reaction to the Fed's rate hike. On the contrary, this reaction shows that people on the markets think that the markets are strong enough to live with slightly higher interest rates, and that it's now time to focus on what's going on in the real economy rather than focusing all the time on the extra generous monetary policy measures introduced by the central banks after the crisis. Of course, I'm only speaking about the United States here. We still have this extra generous money supply in Europe and in other places of the world, and that keeps supporting markets, of course, as well.
Right, the European Council meeting in Brussels ended last night with UK's Prime Minister David Cameron saying a pathway to a deal on new terms for Britain's membership of the EU has been found. What are the takeaways for investors?
Well, you know, if you are a good willing commentator, you could find a few statements coming out of Brussels after this dinner where David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, presented his ideas about the EU. A few statements were made there that are pointing towards potential compromises being found. For example, in the question whether or not migrants within the European Union that come to the United Kingdom would be banned for 4 years before they were able to claim social benefits from the United Kingdom. The things that people in the EU had said before about that didn't really point towards a compromise. Now afterwards there might be a compromise possible. But I really have to say, this night in Brussels also showed that the fundamental differences between countries that want to integrate the European Union more, on the one hand, and on the other hand, countries that want to rather keep the European Union to be some economic cooperation thing without too much integration and too much transfer of political power on a supranational level. This difference will rather continue. And it's not only Britain that's playing the national card here. We have in Hungary a very nationalist government. The new government in Poland has been showing very much that it's not very interested in finding common ground with the European Union partners, but that it's really interested to stress the national, and I would even call it nationalist point of views in Poland. This is a difference that's going to be getting even larger in the time to come with this ongoing discussion, and it means for investors that they have to live with more uncertainty. They will not see a United States of Europe being formed after the model of the United States of America, at least not for a very, very long time.
Right, Conrad, Monday is the countdown to the Christmas trading week. Will Santa Claus come to the Frankfurt Stock Exchange?
Well, I think, Chimezi, Santa Claus comes everywhere, even through the chimney of this old building here.
Right.
And if we take into the consideration that this year was a very, very turbulent year, I mean, you sit in Nigeria, you know what I'm talking about, the deep slump of commodity prices, the concerns about China, the Federal Reserve changing its interest rate policy, all these things had to be digested on the markets, and still on a weekly scale, on a yearly scale, from the beginning of this year, the German stock index here is up between 7 and 9% at the moment. I think Santa Claus already has done a very decent job so far, and it's not so important whether the DAX will continue to rise over the Christmas days and towards the end of the year. But the chances are that we are going to see some of this.
Well, I don't know about you, Conrad. I would love to have a lunch date with Santa Claus. Well, thank you for your time, Conrad. And have a beautiful weekend. Well, that was Conrad Boson, DWTV Channels TV correspondent, reporting from Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Let's take a quick break now, and when we return, a lot of optimism about the outcome of the 10th WTO ministerial meeting ongoing in Kenya. Do stay with us.